Citizens' Perception of Government's 2022 Performance on 5 key functions, executive, legislative, and judiciary branches ranked poor. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the Institute for Research and Democratic Development, IREDD, Liberia's lead policy research and advocacy, democratic governance monitoring and advocacy institution, is pleased to share with the public through your respective media institutions outcomes of a survey conducted to assess government performance in terms of good public services. IREDD, being cognizant of its advocacy role for social economic justice, transparency and accountability in public service, at the start of 2022 incorporated in its monitoring work plan a provision for citizens to assess how they perceive their government performance on 5 basic functions of government in terms of public service administration. To ensure a free and credible outcome, IREDD used the 5 basic functions of government and conducted an open-ended perception survey during its project activities implementation across 8 of Liberia's 15 counties: Monserrado, Margibi, Grand Bassa, Bong, Nimba, Cape Mount, Lofa, and Grand Jida counties. Citizens were asked to assess the government's performance on the scale of poor, fair, and good. Citizens in 8 counties mentioned served as respondents. The 5 functions of government used for the government 2022 performance in terms of the outcome of the public good were drawn from 9 known functions of government globally, of which Liberia is no exception. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, in order to ensure a balanced assessment, 3 branches that made up the government of Liberia were supposed separately assessed on the 5 given through the structural questionnaires administered alongside IREDD's project activities implementation from January to October 2022. During this 10-month period, IREDD directly engaged 7,200 citizens, 3,168 males and 4,032 females, to assess the government performance as they perceive it on 5 key functions of government as follows. 1. Administration of justice, unconditional respect for the rule of law. 2. Domestic order, equal protection of citizens irrespective of creed, tribe, connection, and relationship. 3. Protection of civil liberty, ensuring the basic rights and liberty of all citizens as assured by the Constitution. 4. Promotion of general welfare, the provision of basic social services to all classes of citizens and ensuring laws to safeguard and equal opportunities and services. And 5. Redistribution of income and resources, ensuring that the economic pie grows largely by taxing the wealthy people and redistributing the fruits to people who are in need through jobs and services. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, an analysis of the 10 long months of repeated engagement with citizens through the 8 mentioned counties revealed on average that 62% or 4,392 of the 7,200 citizens interviewed perceived the performance of the legislature, executive, and judiciary branch as poor. Citizens' Perception Metrics, Governor of Liberia's 2022 performance. Under Function 1, Administration of Justice, unconditional respect for the rule of law. The executive branch. Respondents perceive the executive branch action as selective justice and failure to respect and implement the rule of law in terms of court ruling. An example would be Justice Cabinet Janet's situation. out of 7,200 respondents, 55 respondents, which is 3,960, perceive the executive branch to be poor, while 29%, which is 2,088, perceive the executive branch of government fair, while 16% perceive the executive branch of government good. Under this same function, the legislative branch of government, respondents perceive the legislative branch of government as having weak oversight to prevent and deter disrespect for the rule of law. Out of 70,200, 4,104, which is 57% of the respondents perceive the legislative branch of government actions to be poor, while 26% perceive it fair, 17% perceive it good. The judiciary branch, under administration of justice and unconditional respect for the rule of law, respondents perceive the judiciary branch as willfully delaying hearing cases within statutory periods and failing to effect available legal remedies to compel compliance to strengthen respect for the rule of law. 57% out of 100% of respondents interviewed perceive the judiciary branch of government performance to be poor, while 32% perceive it fair, 11% perceive the judiciary branch of government to be good. Under domestic order, the equal protection of citizenry, irrespective of creed, tribe, connection, and relation. The executive branch, respondents perceive the executive branch of unequal protection of citizens. Example, the countless number of unexplained deaths across the country without remedial action. Example is Princess Cooper and student Christopher Waters, civilian of UL, as an example. Under this, 7,200 respondents, 52% of that number perceive the executive branch of government performance as poor. Under domestic order, which is the equal protection of citizenry irrespective of creed, tribe, connections, and relations, the judiciary branch of government is perceived by respondents as being part of a well-calculated plan by lawyers to unduly delay as cases far above statutory period. Example, the huge number of citizens in pre-trial detention across the country. 61% of the 100% of respondents interviewed perceive the judiciary branch of government performance to be poor, while 27% perceive it fair and 12% perceive the judiciary branch of government good. The legislative branch of government. Respondents perceive the legislative branch of government fail to make laws to prevent and deter willful delay by lawyers and judges to proceed with cases within statutory period. Thereby, 57% of the 7,200 respondents interviewed perceive the legislative branch of government performance to be poor in the year 2022. Under protection of civil liberty, which is citizens' perception, looking at perceive and conserve the basic rights and liberties of all citizens as assured by the Constitution, the executive branch under this function is perceived by the citizens' failure to provide equal protection and unlimited civil liberty. The countless unexplained deaths across the country, the threat to shut down District number 15 radio station after Henry Costa announced a return to the airwaves. Out of 7,200 respondents, 49% perceive the executive branch of government under this to be poor. Out of 7,200 respondents, the respondents perceive the judiciary branch of government as being corrupt, willful delay to hear death and other related cases, affect appropriate legal actions to prevent lawyers, calculated delay to the proceedings. Example, the truck driver Aliu Sharif case. 56% of respondents under this perceive the judiciary branch of government to perform poor and being corrupt. The legislative branch. Respondents perceive the legislative branch as failing to effect robust oversight function to prevent and deter willful abuse of citizens' basic rights and assured by the Constitution of Liberia. The saga with the Civil Unification Party Fix the Country rally. 49% of the respondents interviewed perceive the legislative branch of government performance under this particular function over the period of 2022 to be poor, while 38% perceive it to be fair, 18% sees it as good. Promotion of general welfare, provision of basic social services to all classes of citizens, laws to safeguard and ensure equal opportunities and service to all citizens that include transportation, education, public health, safe drinking water, electricity, jobs, and safety. The executive branch under this function, respondents perceive the executive branch of failure to provide general welfare to all citizens, especially equal protection and jobs opportunity. The huge number of unemployed citizens around the country, as per what you see around the street with the orange and Lone Star meanings. 7,200 respondents that were interviewed, 82% grade the executive branch of government's performance as poor, while 5% grade them good. Under this same function, the judiciary branch of government, respondents perceive the judiciary as being corrupt and willfully delaying the effects of appropriate legal action to promptly handle work-related or labor-related cases. 49% of the respondents interviewed perceive the judiciary branch of government to be poor and corrupt, while 55% say it's fair and 6% say it's good. Under this same function with promoting general welfare, the legislative branch of government is perceived to fail to make strong laws to compel compliance for equal protection and opportunity irrespective of any form of connection. 78% of our respondents under this particular function perceive the legislative branch of government to performance to be poor, while 6% says it's good. Under the redistribution of income and resources, ensuring that the economic pie, which is the budget, grows larger by appropriately taxing and the wealthy people and redistributing the fruits to people who are in need through the provision of jobs and social services. Under this, the executive branch of government, respondents perceive the executive branch of the failure to appropriately allocate and redistribute the country's income and resources, even though the 2022 fiscal year budget is considered the largest ever financial instrument of Liberia. 1 cent, and I repeat, 1 cent was not added to the citizens through civil servant salary. Out of this, out of our 7,200 respondents, 82 persons or respondents perceive 82% of our respondents perceive the executive branch of government under redistribution of income and resources to perform poor, while 5% of 7,200 respondents perceive the executive branch of government to perform good. Under the same redistribution of income and resources, 72% of our respondents perceive the legislature as failing to make laws that benefit and improve citizens' livelihood. Example, the legislature willfully failing to increase civil servant salaries even though they are sent the budget to review and appropriate, while 6% perceive their performance as good. Under this same redistribution of income and resources, respondents who are citizens of Liberia perceive the judiciary of failure to effect the appropriate legal actions to remedy the situation. 49% of our respondents see the performance of the judiciary as poor under redistribution of income, while 6% perceive the judiciary as good. Example is the Supreme Court rate of arrest on the Minister of Finance for failure to pay the 3-month salary without referring civil servants in a similar situation. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, thank you ever so much, and God bless Liberia.
So the Executive Director will take questions if you have any.
Yes, so I had a question.
Yeah, please.
So my name is Prince, and I report for Prime FN and Focus on Liberia. So the issue of the equal distribution of wealth and the provision of basic social services to all classes of citizens that has to do with the budget distribution and allocations mainly to the civil servant. Responding that 82% of the respondents said government is poor in that area, the executive, and then coming to the judiciary and the legislature. So looking at the legislative branch, the respondents said 78% said poor, 16% said fair, and 6% said good. Now the budget again is before the legislature with this report, performance report. IREDD had gathered from the citizens across the country. What is IREDD doing as a legislature will be discussing the budget in ensuring that some of those concerns raised by citizens are taken into consideration, especially allocating money for incrementing civil servants' salary that has been kept in this report.
Thank you. IREDD, upon the reopening of the legislature, when it comes from break, will engage the various committees, the budget committee, the committee on the committee on race, means and finance, to make sure that these things that we have highlighted here serve as an eye-opener for them to properly allocate the resources, knowing fully well that even this year is an elections year that will include, yes, the increment in citizens' civil servant salary, and also the appropriation to education and health, which are very key, including security and elections are very key in this particular 2023 fiscal year. We intend to engage those various committees.
Any other concern or question? Okay, with that, we call this press conference to a close. Thank you, Matthias Yelin, Executive Director.
So that's Matthias Yelin. He is the Executive Director of the Institute for Research and Democratic Development. They have been addressed in the media. Thanks for following. My name is Prince Moba. Bye-bye for now.